just a few minutes. Obviously, the enthusiasm behind this issue has resulted in a very large turnout here this evening. We're going to figure out some logistics. Obviously, raise your hand if there's an open seat next to you. So there are still seats here. For those of you who are looking to find a seat, there are still seats here, and we're going to try and figure out some further logistics. Just bear with us a moment longer. Obviously, this is a tremendous demand to hear about this issue. As such, our County Resource Commissioner, myself, and our wonderful hosts here at the Southfield Library will be hosting this event again on Monday evening. So if you are sitting in the audience now and feel like you would like to attend Monday instead, they are lined up in the lobby all the way into the library. People giving up your spot for perhaps somebody who has been standing out there and is perhaps less able than you to attend at a later date. We're very cognizant of people making a long way. That would be appreciated. However, do know, Monday night on the 1st of February, we will be replicating this event. And we're making that announcement as well in the hallway. Hey, raise your hand again if there's a seat next to you, okay? Okay, wonderful. So those people who are standing, you can come back on Monday night and hopefully find a seat then. But we're going to get started.
My driver got in. I came ahead.
Okay.
Susie. And she didn't get in. I'm not always reading.
Okay. Well,
there was someone.
We're going to find a staff member. Can you check to see if this woman's driver is available? What's your name, ma'am?
Nancy.
Nancy?
Her name is Carolyn. Carolyn, are you here?
So Carolyn isn't in here, but we are going to check in the line to see if Carolyn is in the line, okay? But in the meantime, we're going to get started with this event because I'm respectful of your time as well. So I'm State Representative Jeremy Moss. I have the pleasure of representing the City of Southfield, and in addition to that, Lathrop Village, I'm in the dark now, Lathrop Village, Beverly Hills, Bingham Farms, and Franklin. I previously served on the Southfield City Council, and we're going to get started with our presentation on oil and gas drilling that's getting a lot of attention lately in the news media and its impact right here on the City of Southfield. This is our agenda for this town hall meeting this evening. I'll be doing some introductions of our officials that will be speaking. Then we'll get a City of Southfield update on what's been going on, in particular to the application at 9 Mile and Evergreen from our mayor. I believe our city attorney is here somewhere. Sue, right in front of me, Sue Ward. But our mayor will be giving, Nancy, we're good?
Your driver is right outside.
So there's a seat for her. All right, wonderful. Then I will be giving a legislative update on some of the items as it pertains to oil and gas drilling that I'm working on in Lansing. Then we're going to go straight into County Water Resources Commissioner Jim Nash's presentation, and we will have time for question and answer. Obviously, we had to have some sort of organization to do the question and answer. You all should have received a card as you signed in. We have extra cards available if you want to. Some of our staff members will be walking around with extra cards. I ask you to fill out your name, to fill out your residence. We're not going to read your address in front of everybody, but just to get an understanding of the questions that are being posed, we're going to ask for your name, your municipal residence, which city you live in, and your question. I will be reading off the questions and screening them for duplicates. We're going to hear from all sides of the issue. We're not going to be biased in terms of the questions. And then if you want to expand on your question, I will say who posed the question. You can raise your hand. We'll make sure that you have a chance to pose the question in your own way if I didn't do justice reading it off the page. So that's how we're doing question and answers. We can't just do hands. It's just a little bit too many people right now.
In case you didn't hear already, this program will be repeated on Monday, February 1st.
That's for the folks in the hall, but you already know that, February 1st.
Once again,
so I want to do some introductions of our officials here. We have Water Resources Commissioner Jim Nash, who has graced us with his time this evening, and again will be here again on the 1st. I saw for those Southfield residents here, your council members are here to find out and to support their position on this permit. I saw Councilwoman Joan Seymour is present. Councilman Ari Mandelbaum I saw was around here. They're in the back. Councilman Dan Brightwell I saw, he's in the back. And Councilwoman Tanya Morris was here briefly. Have I missed? Tanya Morris is right in the front here. Are there any other city officials that I've missed here? Obviously, we're going to turn it on over next to our mayor of the city of Southfield with an update in particular to the actual physical permit that I think a lot of you are interested in at 9 Mile and Evergreen, our mayor, Ken Seifert.
Good evening. I don't know if this microphone works or not, so I'll just speak as loud as I can. We are, when I say we, city administration, our city planner is here, Terry Crow, who's been the point person with the DEQ for a lot of this, as well as our attorney, Sue Ward, our city administration, our city manager, the council, and myself. We are all adamantly opposed to drilling in a residential area. As far as we are concerned, this has no place in Southfield. We are a developed community, and this is a community with over 800 acres of parkland, including Barbaric Woods right across the street from Word of Faith. We value our tree canopy, we value our natural green spaces, and this is totally incompatible with our natural spaces as well as our residential areas. So we are going to fight this, and I really, pretty much the DEQ does what they want. It's sort of amazing to me that the state government will complain all the time when the federal government mandates something, but the state legislature has no problem overruling local communities. It happens all the time. Yes. As an elected official for 16 years, I can tell you the amount of erosion of local control, and as a school administrator before that, that we don't have you think we're representing you, you think that we would have a greater voice, but they have done a constant erosion of our ability to control what happens in our own community. But I want to, I had to acknowledge Jeremy. When this came up, we communicate with our state legislatures. Our problem, obviously, in Southfield is that we have Vince Gregory in the Senate and we have Jeremy in the House, and they're in the minority. And the DEQ is controlled by the Republican Party and the governor's appointees, and they do hundreds of permits every year. And Jeremy's had the temerity to just say, I want a public hearing. They ignored it for weeks and weeks. And on Friday last week, I got a call from the DEQ, I think mostly because Jeremy called Dick Postumus, who's the governor's sort of first lieutenant, and said, what are you doing? You got a mess in Flint. Are you going to create another mess? That gave them pause. So I got a call on Friday from the DEQ saying, well, could we have a public hearing in Southfield? I said, of course you could. What can I do to facilitate that? So I have offered City Hall. It'll be in the council chambers because we need the audio visual, but we will have spillover in the pavilion. We'll have monitors and more chairs. There'll be plenty of seating, I guarantee you that. This will be on Wednesday, February 17th at 6 p.m. I encourage all of you to come out to this event. My understanding, and I have to tell you, I've heard from so many people in this community that are opposed to this. And we were doing our part since last fall, and I kept saying, we need a citizen army. Well, here you are. It's fine, we're doing what we can do from official channels, but it's really about this community rising up and saying, no way. And I want to say that this is not against Word of Faith Church. This is about drilling. I have no, and I think I speak for everybody on council and the administration. We welcome Word of Faith here. The parishioners, they do good work, but we do not want drilling on their property. Loss of our green canopy either, and they're talking about 1.5 acres of tree destruction on this property. So I'm very glad to have all of you here tonight, and to know that there's probably twice as many people in the hall that couldn't fit here. But I appreciate the work that Jeremy has done to help leverage our position. Pretty much the DEQ issues these permits and they don't do public hearings. So the fact that we're having a public hearing is very noteworthy. I'm going to be excusing myself. I'm double booked tonight. I'm speaking before the Total Living Commission in about 10 minutes over at City Hall with another presentation. But Jeremy will take it over from here. And again, thank you so much for standing up about this.
Mayor. So I wanted to provide a legislative update. I share the same environmental and health concerns, I believe, as everybody else does surrounding this particular permit and the broader overall implications of beginning to drill in a local community that's densely populated such as ours. And I've expressed consistently, I'm a former city council member, as many of you know. I'm the minority vice chair of the local government committee, and I've had a concern about the process as well. Concerned about local government's voice not being able to be amplified enough and respected during this process by which the DEQ considers these permits. As such, today, I introduced House Bill 5258, which was referred to the Committee on Energy Policy, and it does a few things that I think that I wanted this community to be aware of. It amends the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, which issues the oil and gas drilling permits in Michigan. Specifically, House Bill 5258 will not allow a permit to be granted in a county with a population of 750,000 or more, which obviously the tri-county area of Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb falls under that umbrella, unless the following conditions are met. Number one, the proposed well must be located at least 2,000 feet from a residential building. Number two, the location and operation of the proposed well must be in compliance with applicable local ordinances, which is what has been the crux of the issue, I think, that is really amplified here in Southfield, that moratorium is currently existing. And number three, that MDEQ must hold a public hearing in the city, village, or township in which the proposed well is located and has considered the public input from that public hearing. As the mayor has mentioned from the very beginning, my office spoke with the DEQ and demanded that a public hearing take place. We got the call last week. We forwarded on to the mayor's office that there will be a public hearing, and the mayor gave the date of that. We want to let you know of a few other upcoming events, but if you look at that middle date right there, Wednesday, February 17th, 6 p.m., and we were told 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., in Southfield City Hall is the MDQ's drilling permit public hearing for this application at 9 Mile and Evergreen. Before that, we're having a water quality town hall with Commissioner Nash on Saturday, February 6th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the Royal Oak Senior Center. It's going to be hosted by myself and most of Oakland County's Democratic delegation, including Representatives Christine Gregg from Farmington Hills, Jim Townsend from Royal Oak, and Robert Wittenberg from Oak Park. we will be joined by our County Resource Commissioner, Jim Nash, and by Dr. Mona Hana-Atisha, who was the one who really sounded the early alarm on the crisis in the water in Flint. I hope you can make that. I'm making this public announcement, but boy, we're going to grow out our room. We're going to outgrow our room for my coffee hour on February 29th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. We hold those every month. If you ever need to get a hold of me, we have some literature on your way out. It has all of my office's contact information. I'm here to serve, and don't hesitate to ever reach out to me. Lastly, this is important because it's a homework assignment for everyone in this room. As you know, what's going on in Flint is a catastrophic tragedy, and we are trying to do our best to provide short-term, these are short-term solutions, by doing a water drive right here in the city of Southfield. I know many of you have been so generous with providing supplies so that we can take them up to Flint. The one thing that's needed are the large jugs of water, not just the packaged bottle of water, but large jugs of water. Another item that is needed urgently is ready-to-serve baby formula that does not need to be mixed with water. So as you see in the library, again, can't thank the library enough for partnering with us for hosting the drop-off. You can drop those items off. It was really supposed to be Monday through Wednesday so we could gather things together. Tomorrow is an additional day to drop off. Another partner in this has been Goodman Acker Law Firm, which is located on 10 Mile in between Southfield Road and Greenfield Road. If that's more convenient of a location for you to drop off, you can do that tomorrow as well. I'll be driving up to Flint on Friday with all of these materials in a truck. So you still have time. If everybody here donated a jug of water or a package of water, look around the room. Look at what the impact it would be. So please consider helping out. Our office will continue to provide opportunities, but we wanted to set a deadline on this first run of tomorrow. So I really hope you can participate in that. And without further ado, I do want to call up the man of the hour, our Water Resource Commissioner, Jim Nash, who will begin his presentation. Don't forget to fill out these cards. We would really like to know what city you live in to see how far-reaching this has begun, and we'll take a few questions now just on the process of the agenda. Just the card? Okay. We will have our staff passing around cards, just raise your hand during the presentation, write it down, we'll collect them, and at the end of his presentation, I'll be reading them, I'll be acknowledging who wrote the card. If you want to expand on your question, we'll give you that opportunity. So, County Resources Commissioner Jim Nash.
Thank you, Jeremy. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, good. If you can't, let me know. I'll speak up a little louder. My name is Jim Nash, and I'm going to be talking about drilling, potential issues, I'm sorry. Take me a second here. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay, this is just a little thing showing hydraulic fracturing, the large-scale horizontal fracking. This is the one on the right there is the one that's going to be more conventional drilling. The rock formations, I've been told many times, are not conducive to the the deep ground horizontal fracking here, so they're going to be doing much more of the conventional drilling. There's some issues around that. I'm going to be talking a little bit about acidification. A bunch of people said that I should bring this up because it's within the permit. The big thing that happens in fracking is whether it's the old-fashioned fracking that was vertical, uses very much water, or the large-scale horizontal fracking that uses millions of gallons of water. What they're doing is they're putting fractures through the ground, through the very deep rock, to allow better infiltration into the line of the gas and oil that they're looking for. So really, in long term, what acidification does is kind of the same thing, not on that level. These are the chemicals that are often used in, it's just a small list of some of the chemicals that are often used in the large-scale fracking and small fracking. The bottom one is the acidization, which is hydrochloric or hydrochloric acid. Since we're not doing real fracking here, the large-scale fracking, this, according to the permit, they're able to use this. I have not seen in what they would use it at, what level of the ground they would use it at, those kind of things. So I'm just going to talk about the general issues around acidization. Some of this is from in the front, at the front counter. I gave about 40 sheets, apparently not nearly enough, of information from the American Petroleum Institute and from a blog, a website blog about acidification. Some of this is from either of those two things. The alternative to fracking for loosening tight rock formations is to contain gas and oil. Drillers dissolve the rock using hydrofluoric or hydrochloric acid or a mixture of the two, among other chemicals. Uses include pipeline washing. That was most of it was used for long term, my understanding is. But they're called matrix and fracture acidizing processes. The matrix acidizing is basically pushing down the acid into the cracks without any pressure. So it's just filling the cracks but not applying any pressure. The fracture acidizing actually does it under pressure, not the same kind of pressures that are used in the large deep fracking, but significant pressure underground to break up the rock and help that acid get in there to produce more ways of getting the oil and gas into the pipe. This is a very powerful acid, extremely powerful. The National Fire Protection Association calls it one of the most dangerous category of hazardous waste. Generally, this is done on sites, on industrial sites where there's people. As a matter of fact, a study by the United Steelworkers said that of 50 oil refineries that use hydrofluoric acid in them, 36 of them were fined and seen to large-scale misuse of these products. Bad safety procedures, using them in the wrong ways. So they found significant misuse of these chemicals in the oil refining process. The average well, according to the American Petroleum Institute, can use anywhere from 10 to 500 gallons of this acid, which is reduced in water, about 16 to 30%, my understanding. 10 to 500 gallons per linear foot that's to be fracked, basically. So this is a significant amount that could be used in a well. Again, as all these things, and I'm going to be running through this the whole time, when you're doing these in front, right in a residential area, there's always more hazard to people. When you're doing an industrial area, it's an industrial area. It's surrounded by other industries. They're all covered by OSHA. These kind of things are done on-site using these same chemicals they use in large-scale industrial facilities, but in the ground right near people. So to me, that's one of those major issues that when you're doing it around people, you got to be very careful with it. So I'm always trying to encourage, and many of the communities around this area are starting to write these ordinances to limit these drilling methods to industrial areas. And that's, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it that way, to me. And I'm going to say, as someone who studied this significantly in Michigan, I am opposed to allowing the deep water horizontal fracturing in Michigan. It's just too messy, uses too much water, there's too much potential for hazards. But the conventional drilling and the old-fashioned conventional fracking, where it's very shallow, uses very little water, I'm not against that. We need to develop these resources, but we need to do it in a way that's not going to impact people who are living in this community or other communities. So to me, residential is the key here thing. The key thing here in this whole facility, you've got to make sure you're doing it in places that aren't going to affect just regular people living their lives. Hydrofluoric acid boils at 67 degrees. That's, a decent spring day, it will boil at normal atmospheric pressures. And when this happens, it can produce a cloud of fumes. This does not dissipate right away. I'm going to get a drink here, this one's And according to many stories, it can roll together in clouds, and it can travel significant distances. And even small doses, according to the Center for Disease Control, I linked to their page on it, even small doses of this can kill you. If you inhale it, it can kill you. If you get a 5 by 5 inch spot on your skin, it can go in through your body and kill you. And it doesn't affect you immediately. So it can catch up to you later, not even realizing that this has happened. Last September in South Korea, there was an 8-ton release. A couple of guys working on a rail car full of it. The seal blew, and it blew up, and it formed this cloud around them, killed the 2 guys there instantly, killed 3 more people right in the nearby where they happened to be. 18 people in the refinery had to be evacuated a hospital, and they stayed in the hospital for a significant amount of time. And 3,000 people in the nearby community had to go to the local hospital and get treatment for it. So this kind of thing, if it happens, can be a traumatic and very impactful event. And again, I'm not saying this is going to happen here. Nobody says this is going to happen here. But as they say in the lottery, the old saying that you can't win if you don't play. Well, in this case, you can't lose if you don't play. So if you don't have these things coming in your neighborhood, you're not going to have the problem. If you do have them, you're raising the potential. So whenever you're talking about these things, I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. It won't necessarily happen to you. But accidents happen. We're human beings. We make mistakes. That incident in Korea was a mistake. Somebody made a mistake, and it killed people. So when we're talking about these things, we have to ensure that we're not doing them around people who can be affected by them. The University of Michigan did a study several years ago. They did a two-part study. The second part was released early last year. The first part went over the potential hazards of drilling, of fracking specifically, but of also all oil drilling. And they said several things. If something leaks underground, when you're deep underground, it can go in odd directions. You don't know where it can be. This study pointed out you can have in the middle of a stream or the middle of a lake, miles away from a drill site, suddenly something comes up out of the ground. So you can never tell where these things are going to be. Fracking wastewater, again, this is much deeper, often has radioactive isotopes in it and heavy metals. There's heavy metals in shallower drilling, not so much radioactive materials. The compaction of land around sites. This is, from my understanding, this is a wooded area right near a wetland, and we've got parks all around it. So there could be effect to that. Again, trucks and equipment. I saw the fact sheet put out by the church and the oil company that said several things that I really have a problem with. For one, well, not so much, but it said that there's a gas station on the corner, opposite corner from this property, and that they have as many trucks coming in out of there. Well, that just means there'll be twice as many. And so whenever you're doing this, there'll be twice as many as there were before, and there's always accidents. There's a lot of accidents per 100,000 miles on a truck. So whenever you're doing that, again, you'll be bringing in you're doubling it. Instead of having just coming for that gas station, you'll come for the gas station and for the other. And again, this is assuming there's only going to be one pad here. If this is an exploratory well, if they find a bunch of oil, they could put more than one pad, so they could have more traffic. The University of Michigan study did not distinguish, except for volume, the impacts of drilling. So drilling is drilling. If you're going to drill, you're going to have these impacts, whether it's a large-scale drill or a small-scale drill. You just have less of these chemicals coming in. And again, this report said, and many reports have said, that there's too little Michigan-specific data to make decisions. That's going to come in a minute. One of the things that this fact sheet from the church said was that drilling for oil can be less of a threat to the aquifer than drilling for water wells. And somehow that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. When you're drilling for water wells, you're pushing down the drill, you're bringing up water. When you're drilling for oil, you're pushing down the drill, you're pushing down chemicals, you're pushing down acids, you're bringing up all those things with oil. So if there's a problem, it's going to be oil. It's not going to be just water from water well. That just doesn't seem to make sense at all. So when they say that, again, there's never been evidence of a spill of oil drilling affecting the aquifer nearby, well, 99% of the time is because it was never tested. Until very recently, nobody tested pre-drilling to look at the groundwater and see what the conditions were. It just was never done. It was something that was mostly because the vast majority of drill rigs in Michigan, until very recently, were done in highly unpopulated areas, mostly in that area around here where there's very few people, but there's significant oil resources. So they were never in need to do that pre-testing or really post-testing, post-drill testing. So a lack of data does not mean good data. So you can't say there's never been a case of something when you have no data to show there's never been a case of something. So you just can't make those statements as if it's scientific when there's no scientific backing for that. Now there's been a lot of studies about fracking, and again, some of these things that can be combined with significant, with regular drilling. A little dry here. What studies have shown, the Missouri Medical School did a study in Colorado where they compared counties in Colorado that had significant amounts of drilling and fracking, and counties that had virtually none. And in the counties that had none, they found very basic standard background levels of chemicals. And in counties that they had significant amounts of drilling, they found very significant amounts of fracking chemicals and chemicals related to drilling in the groundwater and in the aquifer. There was a small spill, several hundred gallons in Kentucky a few years ago, that wiped out all the fish in a little stream nearby. And it was just a very small, few hundred gallons, and it was enough to wipe out all the fish significantly downstream. And the most common thing they found was levels of heavy metals in the gills of the fish, so they were being killed by heavy metals. The National Academy of Sciences report that fracking contaminates water. The American Academy of Pediatrics did a study that showed that the VOC releases, volatile organic compounds, that's what methane is. When methane, which leaks from all the whole oil and gas supply chain, it leaks right from the ground, pulling out of the ground, to when it comes out of your furnace or your stove or something, that there's leaks all through the system. So when if it's near a road, if it's near a heavy traffic area, the fumes from the methane, if they mix with the fumes from the exhaust of the cars, creates ground level ozone. I don't know if you're familiar with ground level ozone. There's ozone days in heavy summer when there's very little wind and very hot. You're not supposed to fill your tank with gas because the fumes, again, are coming off it. It's VOCs, and then you've got all the exhaust around you. So you end up developing ground level ozone. So we have ozone protection laws. SEMCOG, Southfield Fishermen Council of Government, enforces that. They're the ones that they put out the ads that show people how to not do that. So whenever there's leaking VOCs near a road, you're going to be creating that. So that's, again, it's a danger to especially children, but it inflames respiratory diseases and can link to cancer. The EPA said methane contamination was detected in private wells thereafter in concentrations after they were drilled, in concentrations exceeding those previously found. Other chemicals found in produced water include VOCs, metals, nucleotides. Scientific American said that high levels of arsenic are found in groundwater near fracking sites. The Greene County Shell well, 3 years ago, almost, a small facility that transmitted oil from wells to trucks, and it was a site that transmitted the oil and gas, exploded. It vaporized the person who was working on it. Nobody ever found any of them. And it burned for well over a week before they could bring a fire crew from Texas to put it out, because fire crews here don't do that kind of thing. So there's significant, always the threat of accidents. The accidents really are going to be your biggest threat. It's been said many times that there's never been a leak in the actual drilling. Again, without data, you can't say that. But again, to me, again, especially in heavily populated areas, accidents are going to be the big issue. So I think that's important that we recognize that. The EPA said we need to improve air emissions data around drilling sites, whether it's fracking or conventional drilling, because, again, methane that comes up out of the ground or leaks through the system until it's been refined also contains other chemicals. Toluene, benzene, even butane comes up with it. So you never know what you're getting when it comes up. There could be other things in the system that are coming up with it. The oil and gas industry is a large source of VOC emissions. That's, again, the United States Health and Human Services Agency on toxic substances. Colorado became the first state to, as a state, regulate all the supply chain for leaks. When they announced that, the Health and Human Services head of that in Oregon said, Colorado, said that if we eliminated all those leaks in the system, it would be the equivalent of taking all the cars off the highway, all the vehicles off the roads in Colorado, just for leaking in that system. The Halliburton loophole, and some people say it's not true, and Phil over there, hopefully keep me honest, and I think we'll allow him to speak a little bit in this. Basically, it says the states regulate, whether it be fracking or most oil drilling. In Michigan, local government has very little role. We're going to talk about it in a minute, how we can do that. But has very little role in the actual processes of giving the permits, of overseeing the drilling operation, and even things like noise ordinances and light ordinances are overridden by the state law. So as long as the 2 or 3 weeks or so, or whatever it takes to do the actual drilling, they are above all that, and they don't have to live under the state, under the local government ordinances for those kind of things. This is more associated with fracking, but again, the flaring of natural gas, there's a noise to it, there's an odor, it's a large flame, and it doesn't necessarily 100% burn the methane. So what's coming up won't necessarily burn. There will also be methane and the other chemicals coming off that to a certain extent. Again, wastewater disposal, whether it's fracking or conventional drilling, they have to get rid of this stuff. You can't treat it really, so it has to be injected, and at some point it's going to be injected into the ground. In Kansas, they went from, on average, 1 to 2 earthquakes a year over 3 on the Richter scale, and now they're doing 2 or 3 or 4 a day over 3 on the Richter scale. They had one just recently, it was 4.8 on the Richter scale, so these are significant earthquakes, and they're directly linked by both the Kansas Geological Survey and the U.S. Geological Survey as specifically related to injection well drilling. Again, this is the nationally methane leakage is a significant problem. For the National Academy of Sciences has a report on that that's linked here. No cases of water, again, I talked about that, the vast majority of wells were tested before or after drilling, so they really can't say that. In my view, sustainability is the standard that all governments should follow. We have to make sure that, as the ancient American Indians said before us, that we have to look at the next 7 generations when you make a decision. I wouldn't go quite that far, but at least the 20 or 30 years ahead, you have to look to see what is this decision going to mean 20 or 30 years down the road. And to me, fossil fuels, that's gone. Fossil fuels are a thing of the past. One of the things they've always said is that there's no cases of contamination of drinking water from drilling. Pennsylvania, a year and a half ago, released reports detailing 243 cases with fracking operations, contaminated wells near them. Some of them, 18 or 20 houses were affected by one well drill. So there is significant impact, and it's been documented in other states, but not so much here. Again, the big scale fracking we haven't done here very much, so we don't know. This is a story I like to tell. The CEO of ExxonMobil goes around the country telling people there's no hazard here, everybody's just exploiting unseen dangers and that aren't there. But when there was a fracking operation started up about a mile from his house, he sued to stop it. He said many of the things that other people said in his lawsuit, that this is something that can harm us, it causes traffic and a lot of things around it. So when it's them, different story sometimes. But having said that, the vast majority of the regulatory oversight is by the state. Local governments do have sources of regulatory authority around water sources, uses, transfers and diversions, flow lines, those kind of things. Water and chemical mixing stations, they can be made to be located in a specific place. Air emission equipment, flares and scrubbers, things like that. You can have them do that. You can make them do that. So there are ways to influence this beyond what the state has you do. This is the actual case that I'm sourcing here. And Flow for Water is a very good organization from the top of the state that helps local communities develop ordinances and do that kind of thing. I would recommend that the city contact them. So the pipelines, not transmission pipelines, but the pipelines that go from the well operation to the first tank yard, those can be regulated locally. Once it gets past that, then it's state and federal regulations. You don't have much to say about it, but at least on the short term, you can do that. Again, these other things with transportation plans, pipelines, even an evacuation in case it's a sour well. Other things can come up through a well casing and harm you, so we have to have plans for that. A lot of it is notifying the local first responders to what's there, so they know when they come that there's potential dangers. All those kind of things you have to be able to do, and I think you have the power to do that. So as much as you can do as a community, I think that's what you should be doing, and hopefully Jeremy's legislation will catch some wind and get going on that, because the more we can do that, the better we are. To me, again, the biggest thing is doing it near people where you live, and that's just way off the charts for me. I'm going to talk a little bit about spills. One of the things they'll tell you with the pipeline that the president just turned down, the first Trans-Canada pipeline was built just
Can you
a few
ask
years
people
before.
to shut off their phones, please? It's irritating.
The Trans-Canada wanted their pipeline. It's been refused by the president. Canada's suing us. But the first leg of that was built some years before, and its very first year of operation, it's built 12 times, including a major leak. One of the things you have to realize, when you hear in the news that a tanker, I'm sorry, a train derails and spills, or a truck goes off the road and spills, it's a tragedy. It causes a major spill, but it's limited. You're limited to what was in that container, what was in the train car or the truck. When you have a spill in a pipeline, until that pipeline recognizes there's a spill, it just keeps pumping that oil or gas out as long as it takes till you realize it's an oil spill. We had the case up in the river up in north Michigan where we had a major spill that's caused $1.2 billion so far to clean up, and they're not done yet. So we have to recognize that spills happen. There was a pipeline, it was a study by the International Association of Oil Engineers that said, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it. Left it off this slide, I used to have it on here. Oh, an International Energy Agency, I'm sorry. That pipelines spill 3 times as much as trucks and trains. Again, because it takes so long for realizing there's an issue that it can go on for a significant amount of time. There was a case back in the late 90s where a hunter in Alaska put a 30-30 hole in the Alaska pipeline. Before they found it, it spilled 30,000 gallons. It was a pool, luckily it was frozen ground. But it was a huge amount, and it's staggering how much can be spilled in a pipeline accident. This is a map of America showing pipeline accidents. You might notice that a significant number of them are in Texas. The largest one, there's had 4.5 million gallons of spills, and 200 spills just in Houston. So these kind of things happen significantly more than you might think. Just in 2010 alone, pipeline spills and explosions killed 25 people. So these kind of things happen more than you might think. They happen when they happen on a road or in a train as it goes through a town. You know about it because it happened there, and you get crews all over it. When it happens in some swamp somewhere, you don't notice it until something happens, and then it's not seen by the public very much. Now we have this leak in California. Significantly unusual leak. This was an underground storage facility for the gas, and through being age, lack of maintenance, and lack of regulation, really, there was very weak regulation on that in California. We're getting a leak that's about almost 100,000 tons of methane a day. According to the story I read here, actually 2 different stories, that's the equivalent of 160 coal-fired power plants running at once. Just that one leak. And they had to evacuate 3,000 homes. It's a state of emergency. And they won't probably stop this till early March, the leak. But this is just one of thousands across the country. The study that was done by the one of the environmental groups, it's listed in one of these stories, said that this is already, the one in California has already released 89,000 tons of methane just from this one leak. But when you look nationwide, in that last year, they're estimating 7.1 million tons of methane were leaked throughout the whole system. The Stanford University recent study showed that the EPA underestimates these by at least 50%, and several other studies of specific areas in Texas have shown that it's significantly more than that. I'm going to go out of here. This is video. No, it should be that. Yeah, that. Oh well, it was just, there we go. This is a video of it coming off the mountain in just massive amounts. This is a thermographic picture, is I think what they call it, and you can take a picture of most any kind of these facilities, and you're going to have some coming off the pipes. It's just what happens. It's just endemic to the system. Oh no, here. Oh, thank you. Yep. So these are links to the stories on that. One's from PBS and one's from NBC, and it has significant links to it. It's they're very good articles that can really tell you how much is happening nationwide. This is a map of Staten Island. They went on a car, just traveled around Staten Island with a meter to register leaks in the system. And these are all the leaks they found. That one little red one, kind of little bottom half there, is a significant leak. And this is just one section of New York City. These are, the older the infrastructure, the more leaks you end up having. And again, this is all, every pound leaked of methane in the first 20 years it's in the atmosphere is 84 times as heat trapping as carbon. It breaks down faster. In 100 years, it's about 25 times as much heat trapping as carbon, but it's a significant heat trapping. And as this keeps going up, it's starting a cycle where in the northern hemisphere, in the Arctic Circle, more and more of these lakes that have been trapped in ice for millennia are thawing. And when that happens, all that bacteria in the bottom starts producing again, and they're producing methane. It's boiling up from the ground, it's boiling up from the bottom of lakes in areas all across the northern hemisphere that hasn't been here in many, many millennia. So this is, it's feeding, it's starting a cycle where it's feeding more and more methane in the atmosphere. Again, this is the stages of the natural gas, and in some way the fuel, I'm sorry, the oil chain of supply chain, and this shows how it's all the places in it where it can leak. But this is very, very common. To me, we can't just be against something. We can't just say we shouldn't have this. We got to find ways to get past this. In my office, we're working in the Commerce wastewater treatment plant. We've put in a geothermal system that pulls the heat out of the sewage we're treating and uses that to heat the building. So we're saving $50,000 a year in that building in natural gas we're not using that we used to use. Many facilities can do that. My city hall, I live in Farmington Hills right next door here. We put in a new city hall where we've eliminated $30,000 a year in natural gas because we're using geothermal power from underground, and we're using solar power on our roof. My house, I just had solar power put at my house. It just came online last week, so I'm eliminated my electrical bill, and eventually I'm going to get rid of my gas furnace and replace it with an electric furnace, and I might get a little few more solar panels. This is the future. This is what we're heading towards. Right now, in Michigan and statewide, we're creating more jobs in the alternative energy fields than we are in the conventional energy fields. Coal is on the way out. This is what's happening. Nationally, just a few years ago, we added, it was 2014, we added 835 megawatts of wind generators and 1,354 megawatts of solar. My solar is going to be hooked into the system of electrical grid. And during the day, as the sun comes up, I start producing more energy. That's when the peak energy starts going up. So we get charged more for that. The more we have people having distributed power in their homes, the less we'll have to use that. We don't use much oil. We are using much more gas in our production of energy. They're saying it's a bridge fuel. I say just get rid of the bridge and start building the other stuff. There's no need to have a bridge. We're building it already. So this is what we have to do long term. The price of solar panels have fallen 60% just since 2010. And this was last year, so they're falling every year. These systems, we still have, they just extended the tax credit, the federal tax credit, 30%. I'm getting almost $10,000 back on my solar panels. So that was supposed to die at the end of this year. They've extended it to 2022. In 2019, it starts scaling down, but they extended it significantly. And the same with wind power. Again, this is the future. This is what we're looking to do in the near future. Holland has said that they want to go 100% renewable energy by 2035. They're already on track. They're ahead of their schedule they've given themselves. Germany has produced significantly 25% of their energy from solar in the past 5 years. It's been slowly building, and they're building it every day. What is it? Spain just introduced a new way of storing solar energy. The big thing, nowhere in the grid do we store energy. They've just created a way of heating salt with mirror solar power. It's concentrated solar power instead of solar panels. And what they do is they heat this mineral rock to thousands of degrees during the day, passing through water to run the turbines, and then all night it stays hot enough to run those turbines. So basically, it's a storage battery that's not a battery. These technologies are becoming more and more common every single day. We've got to start getting off this addiction to fossil fuels we've had for so long. More and more people are doing it. Google has announced they're going to take all their energy from solar power. Apple is producing more and more solar power, and they're helping communities do that too. So these are the things we have to look for. We can't just say we're against something. We have to replace that energy as a source. So that's what I'm trying to do statewide and nationally, and whatever we can do locally is what we need to be doing. So we have plenty of time for questions, and I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch.
Great. Appreciate it. Obviously, we have a stack of questions. We're not able to get to everyone, but we're going to try and combine some questions together. We have staff in the back that has been sifting through them as best as we can. There's a few questions that. Okay, so yeah, there are questions. If you don't have your question answered here tonight, we're going to do our best to sift through these and reach back out to you. You can always email my office, and my contact information is on a sheet that's on the back and on the table as you exit here if you haven't gotten it. And County Commissioner Nash's presentation can be viewed here, and his office is reachable. So we're going to start off, and I'm putting our City Attorney, Sue Ward, a little on the spot with some of the questions regarding process. This is from Kelly Thomas, who's here. Word of Faith is stating and standing on the fact that drilling is on a private property matter. Can you talk a little bit about the moratorium, its overarching impact on this in terms of private property, public property? And then there's another follow-up question that there was a statement that was issued already that Southfield has 2 drilling sites. So can you talk a little bit about those 2 questions? I think that encompassed some of the other questions in the bunch. You know, what does this moratorium mean, and especially if Word of Faith is a private property, et cetera.
So the moratorium is in effect. The City Council put that into effect a little over a year ago. It's in effect until April 28th. The moratorium is in effect. Within that moratorium period, there is no potential for anyone commencing mining, extraction activities, unless they go to council and are able to show some kind of hardship that would allow them, they have no use of the property beyond the fact that they could drill, and council could listen to that, and if they wanted to, they could grant that right during the moratorium. At this point, nobody's come to council and asked for that exception, so that moratorium is in effect, and we have communicated that to the DEQ, that the moratorium is in effect. Also that this is residentially zoned property, and it is not a permitted use in the city of Southfield to undertake mining or drilling in a residential neighborhood. So we're working on an ordinance, and I think it's been indicated, it has not been approved by council, that's the purpose of the moratorium, but we're looking at mining, drilling, perhaps being permitted in an industrial zoned property. And there's plenty of that within the city. It doesn't need to be, this kind of stuff doesn't need to be occurring in a residential neighborhood. So that the city has gone on record, several communications with the DEQ objecting to this, both the environmental issues, the nuisance issues of the truck, the fumes, the noise, the lights, all of that goes with it. And again, the fact that the moratorium is in existence. The woodlands have been mentioned. They would need to take out approximately an acre and a half of pretty mature woodlands at that corner, and that would be an issue under our woodlands ordinance. City also has a wetlands ordinance. Where they're proposing to drill is very, very close to, we are in the process of checking to make sure it's not in the wetlands, but at least is impacting the city's wetlands ordinance as well. So, you know, we've got an environmental expert working with the city who is looking at all of this, has assisted us in preparing our objections to the DEQ. And again, we were very very impressed that we got some action through State Rep Moss's office to get this public hearing, and I think it's very important that everybody show up for that. So that's where we are right now, but the city is certainly doing everything it can to oppose this as well.
But they're gonna just go ahead anyway, right?
Well, if they go ahead, I mean, remember now, the state, if the state were to issue the permit, that allows them under state law. Our position is you still can't drill in Southfield because you don't have permission to. So we also are preparing a litigation, and if the state grants the permit and they start any kind of activities out there, we're prepared to go into court and seek an injunction.
The pile here, I want to acknowledge, we're obviously, again, not going to get to every question, but Gail Barber asked, please explain the permitting in this case. I think that answered her question, hopefully. Joe Farmer asked, what is the process used by the DEQ to make a decision? Will there be a vote by the public? When will a decision be made? So that, I think, is answered by the fact that we are having a public hearing on Wednesday, February 17th. That will be conducted by the DEQ. They're not tallying up a vote of for and against or anything like that, but they are bound to by holding the public hearing. It's not just a kind of a rubber stamp of a decision on their end, and they're just holding it for show. So I encourage residents to articulate their points at that public hearing on the 17th. Again, that will be held at Southfield City Council Chambers at 6 p.m. There will be an overflow room for that event, so don't worry if you're not able to get it. Council Chambers is right across this complex. So we're in the library now. Across is City Hall. Council Chambers are inside City Hall. A few people asked, and I don't know if Jim or others can answer this question. Well, first we'll go to a few questions dealt with animal life, tree life, in specific Trans Franklin. We have the Rouge River that runs in our backyard. I want to know how this will affect animals who drink this water. I don't know if you want to, we had other questions about trees, I think, other questions about animal life in the area.
Well, again, mostly it's around accidents. Again, I haven't seen enough to tell me what kind of methods they're using or anything like that. So it's kind of up in the air, from my understanding. This is supposed to be just a test drill. I don't think this is a production drill. It's supposed to be a test drill to see what it is. So this is a different process, and then they have to go through another permit to do an actual production drill. So that's my understanding how that works. Real quick, I just wanted to mention that the idea that they have absolute property rights, well, nobody has absolute property rights. You can't put a four-story house in a neighborhood that says that's against. You can't open up a brothel. You can't do a lot of different things. And so the idea that this is an absolute is just nonsense to me. We have the ability to use our property within the law, within the ordinance of the local community. I mean, that's what you have the right to do.
So another question from Mrs. P. Ligon is, have you researched the method of drilling that will be used? You stated, and I concur, that fracking will not be used. What method will be used? Can you go a little bit into this exploratory process?
Well, again, this is just an exploratory well. They sink a well in to see what's available, what it would produce from that perspective. Again, I'm not a oil engineer, so I couldn't really give you any specifics.
Is there the same truck traffic and those issues with an exploratory well?
Well, the long-term ones where they're coming three times every other day, and they have that's from the production well. This will be another. They put the derrick up, they'll do all the other things they do for a well, but it's not going to be producing a well.
Would they not be using the acid for the exploratory?
I'm not sure. My understanding is the permit allows them to use it, but I haven't seen anything that says exactly what they're going to do, and I don't think they produced anything that says exactly what they're going to do.
Those are some of the questions we've asked them. It's exactly what is it that you're going to do, and then explain how that would impact the groundwater, the Rouge River. And so that's a lot of the communications we've had with the state is describe exactly what they're going to do and how that impact would be. And look, we have not gotten responses back.
And I can tell you, in 2001, a company came to Farmington Hill and wanted to drill along 275 on the edge of a subdivision. The city opposed that. the city had asked them repeatedly for information, and they wouldn't give it. And they finally just, in exasperation, said, well, we're not gonna allow it, it's a residential area, so we're not gonna allow it. They were sued by the company, and they lost. They lost an $800,000 judgment. $650,000 was paid for by insurance, but $150,000 had to be paid for out of the general fund. They were willing to do that at that point. Nowadays, things are not as good as they were in 2001, so most communities just don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the funding to do that, so they're especially the smaller community, they're more likely to just say, okay, we'll do it. So,
Could intimate domain play a part in this?
again, that doesn't come into play by state rules. The DEQ, the Office of Oil and Gas, is the one that does all that, so my understanding now.
On what grounds did they lose? Do you remember what grounds they lost?
I talked to my mayor about it a few times, and I couldn't specifically tell you. Basically, I think it was that they were denied the access to the site. I mean, that was basically, they weren't allowed to drill where they had permits, or where they had, not permits, but.
Excuse me, since the Rouge River and the park and wetlands, Michigan State does a lot of work in some of those parks and wetlands. Could they be involved? Can we get Michigan State involved?
Well, DNR, starting in 2012, leased most, I'm aware of, most state land for mineral extraction. So the vast majority of state land is available for mineral extraction. That was through DNR. They did a series of auctions for that, and the auctions went ridiculously low, $12 an acre out west, $12,000 an acre. In fact, there was some claims that there was some collusion going on between the companies. That was covered by the Free Press some years ago. But so basically, all of the state land's already been leased, so I don't see the state coming in and having a problem with it. A lot of communities, Waterford and several other communities, have given the leases on all their city land. So.
Why would they do that?
So that's a very good question. So a lot of these questions, I encourage you to attend the public hearing, which is specific to this permit. Obviously, we invited County Water Resource Commissioner Nash to give an overview of the process. When the public hearing is actually going to be set is when questions can be answered, and I hope that the residents are prepared to pose this. You know, what's the financial motive here? That was by Richard Meltzer. You know, a lot of people just stating their opposition to it. What proof does the MDQ and Jordan Drilling have that the citizens will not be affected? By Yvette Stroman. How many wells are allowed on this site over the course of time? By Grace Alexander. So those specific questions about this specific proposal, I encourage you to ask that at the public hearing, because this is a presentation on the overall impact on environment, so that you kind of have a foundation of knowledge and then can ask those questions about the specific. So I can get into kind of the weeds of some of these questions here, just if you'll bear with me. Yes?
One friend has a press release on the website.
Okay.
And in that website, they give specific things that this process will take place. I got it from a member of the church.
Okay.
And they're saying specifically that they're going to use certain things like sand and carbonate and limestone and dolomite, salt and androhite. I mean, you know, they're saying these specific things. Are they going to be held, if they're allowed to do that, are they going to be held to this process? And can we use this against them if we're going to, you know, litigate?
I was
Well, but the
I think what they're
inspection
doing
will
is, it says what they can use.
Right,
Not
and then the
necessarily what they're
inspection will
gonna
be
use.
done by the DEQ, which my understanding is they don't get to those sites all that often to really inspect what's going on.
They're on site during the drilling process, my understanding is, and then they visit them, once they're capped, they disappear.
So who's responsible for the security of the site and the chemicals that will be on that site?
Again, I would say save that question for the DEQ itself at the public hearing on the 17th. These are good questions. I'm going to continue on with some of the cards.
But that won't fall under the responsibility of the Southfield Police, will it?
No, that would be regulated by the DEQ.
Okay.
That would be regulated by the DEQ.
Okay, so Tanya Sharon asks a question. Doesn't the extraction of oil or gas increase greenhouse gases in the atmosphere?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we're really coming to terms, and again, we're the only industrialized country that really doesn't understand this and get it. And so I just, a few months ago, with 192 nations signed an agreement saying we should do something about this. We can't just stop.
I know, he's not getting to mine. I got a question up there, and everybody else is throwing out their questions. I want to ask, unless I heard this wrong, you just said this is not fracking. This is exploratory drilling. This whole presentation for the last 45 minutes was about fracking. And yes, your title is there, fracking town hall. Okay? I support it. I'm just saying, why isn't this an unbiased presentation? I heard all the bad.
We don't want no drill.
No comment.
We don't want no drill. We don't want no drill.
Questions and answer the questions now that people
I've been reading a lot of these
give them
questions.
to our spokesman
All right.
and let them answer them. My God.
We've been asking
We
the
gotta wait for
questions
a
that
public
have been
hearing to
asked.
have our answers.
We've been asking the questions and I've been reading the statements. Again,
Let
I want to
him
lay
read
the
the statements,
foundation.
let him answer the questions.
I'm more than okay with doing
Get
that.
off the stage.
This is. We're going to continue on. Again, I want to be very clear. Okay, Tanya Sharon, go for it.
There was a second part to my question.
Okay.
If any extraction of oil or gas is increasing greenhouse gases, shouldn't we not permit any more extraction anywhere, anytime? No more new drilling because it's increasing greenhouse gases.
Well, the way I would answer that is, well, first of all, the reason I talked about fracking first was what we do around oil drilling, whether it's fracking or not fracking, still has an impact on the local folks. That's why I was saying. In terms of just not allowing any more permits, I don't think that's practical. I don't think that's going to happen. We need to start the process of replacing it before we just end what we're doing. We can't just say we're not going to do this anymore and then we'll figure out what to do. We have to figure out what to do and then not use it anymore. So it's a process of how we get there. And again, I'm against the horizontal fracking in Michigan. I don't think we need to do it. It won't affect our economy enough to make a difference. It's years in the process of doing it, and the potential harm is way more than regular drilling. So to me, over time, we're going to end up eliminating all this. We're going to quit. We're going to get off fossil fuels eventually. So it's a process to get there, and I don't think we should just stop immediately everything. That's just not practical.
I want to continue on. So Katie Sontag's question is on a similar vein. I think that was answered. I'd rather see a complete ban in Michigan. We need to safeguard all of our water. I'm going to read Connie Jackson. It's Connie Jackson here. I'm a little confused by the question, so I'll read it. The Jordan Corporation approached Rochester residents for leases to drill. Is that possible for Southfield?
Yes, because if they don't get the permit to do it, can they go to individual residents and get leases to drill on those lands in order to drill?
I think that what we understand is it couldn't be a single residential property. There would have to be an agreement among a certain number of acres for the drilling to occur. But
Then how can they drill around our property without our permission?
it's a good question for the DQ.
They've gone to individuals.
Right.
Rochester. They've gone to individual people and asked them.
Right, but my understanding is they're trying to get the number of acres together to allow for a drilling site. So if they can get, let's say, 40 residential lots that come up with the total that's needed for drilling, then they've got it.
Yeah, that's in line with the question that I asked.
about the private property? How can they do that? How can they supersede any ordinance?
Well, and we're claiming they can't. We're claiming they can't supersede the ordinance.
So I'm going through the questions here. Andrea Stamps, what are the pros outlined through the presentation? And I know you had mentioned that, and I can continue to read the rest of the question as well, but I know you had mentioned that you're not opposed to this process in its entirety. I mean, can you describe the pros?
Well, again, doing it in industrial areas. To me, that's the only solution. You can't do it in residential areas. It's just wrong.
So
we have they can do it, so we shouldn't interfere with it. Some communities here have none, so I mean there is an issue with that. So, but as long as it's reasonable, I think it should be able to hold up. But again, there will probably be court challenges.
Is Andrea here? You want me to? I can read the rest of your card. All right. So she supports the drilling and considers it a blessing for her and her community. The intro started by saying that this is a Republican issue, and the meeting is one-sided. I think you had mentioned that. So we're trying to get every question answered.
And we started out by saying the Republicans.
Right.
This isn't a partisan.
Oh, yes, it
I'm going to continue to read. I'm going to continue to read the cards. Excuse me. I just want to continue to read the cards because in about 5 minutes we're going to close out this session. So I want to continue to get through as many cards as possible. M.E. Horton. If the MDQ decided to allow the permit against the community's wishes, can/how the permit be denied/stopped? U.S. Attorney, lawsuit, what if anything can anyone do additionally has a date been set? So I think our city attorney addressed that a little bit. If you want to repeat
No,
the
I think
information.
it's exactly that. We will file in court. If the council authorizes us, we will file an action in court.
Another question from Larry. Is the church paying for this? Does the risk exceed the benefit? And that's a question I'm not able to answer here today. Sonny, a resident of Southfield, after the property sat for so long and nothing mentioned about oil, who brought this about? I'm not sure. When was the first time that the city was made aware of
We
this?
heard there had been some seismic investigations going on in that area. And apparently, again, from what we understand, they concluded through the seismic activity that there was something in that location. And that's how that location was selected.
What year?
Early last year, early 2015, is when we became aware.
I'm the one that called you.
Okay.
Yeah. They were putting sounding equipment around Bowerdick Woods also, not just.
No, they just use, they just use the equipment and they're able to tell, again, they're going to test to see if it's borne out by what they've investigated.
Any hydraulic, or any horizontal drilling would take place from probably now the church side, but it could go under all of your homes.
Sure.
Exactly. Jeremy, for the meeting, for your open house, just to respect the word of faith members, I'm against fracking, but to make sure that it is balanced. I haven't heard that coming to the meeting or who has been invited to the meeting, the owner of the oil company was sitting in this chair in the corner.
That's,
and he ducked out.
Stephanie, that's not accurate. That's not the owner of the oil
But
company.
my recommendation is to bring everybody into this transparent. You bring someone in from the oil company, you bring someone in from the church to make sure that it does appear balanced. Because if you do just have what looks to be a slanted agenda or whatever, then we may not get the results from the community.
I'm a member of Word of Faith and I completely disagree.
And I'm a member and
I'm trying to help you guys out.
We're gonna go back to, I appreciate your comments. We're gonna go back to the question. This is a question on the crux of the presentation. Candace asks, what is the percentage from accidentals in drilling to successful non-hazardous drilling? Is Candace here to expand on that question?
Well, you said, what is the chances of it happening?
Oh, what are the chances? Yeah.
I couldn't tell you on a specific case-by-case basis. Again, there's very, very little data, so we don't know. And we don't know how many in the past have leaked because they didn't do pre or post-drilling testing to know. So if you don't have any data, you can't make any claims. It's just not right.
Marie Kane asks, how can this happen in Southfield where homeowners are ticketed for grass that has grown too tall? part of the issue, which is that we have city ordinances, and city ordinances are supposed to be complied by everybody, across the board here. So I said that we had to wrap up. Unfortunately, it's 7:25. I know that another meeting is beginning in the library at 7:30. Please, I'm going to give you my contact information, and I want anybody who feels that their question was not addressed or was not asked here tonight to email me directly, and we will do our best to respond. Again, a lot of the questions pertaining to the permit, not the process, can be addressed at the February 17th meeting. That's Wednesday. That's from 6 to 9. That's where I will say this: if you support the permit application going forward, that's your chance to speak to the DEQ and say you're in support of this process and articulate your reason why. That's where that process is taking place. So again, if you know of somebody that wasn't able to attend tonight's meeting, we are going to be duplicating it again on Monday evening. We appreciate your interest and activism on this issue as a whole, and we will see you at a later date. Thank you very much.
Are non-Southfield residents welcome to
It's my understanding at a public hearing, it is open as a First Amendment right for anybody to weigh in on. Yes?
For the members of Oregon State that are here, when you have